Well, there it is. Another summer, another Champions League disaster for Celtic. Add Kayet to the ever-growing list. Maribor, Malmo, AK Athens, Cluj, Ferencvaros, Midtjylland, and Bodo/Valent. 7 teams we had no business losing to, and yet here we are again. Underprepared, under-delivering, and now, once more, out of Europe's elite competition before it even truly begins. Honestly, it's becoming a pattern so predictable it could be scripted. What we saw on that pitch wasn't just a loss. It was a complete failure of ambition, preparation, and mentality. It's not just the missed penalties or the lack of goals. It's everything. It's how slow we moved the ball, how disconnected we looked, how absent the fight was when we needed it most. When you've got 2 legs of football and not a single goal to show for it, against a team with a fraction of your resources, something is seriously broken. Let's not pretend here. This isn't one of those European nights where we played well and got unlucky. This wasn't a Bayern Munich or a PSG outclassing us. This was Kayet. No disrespect to them. They did their job, they were organized, they were clever, but they're not a top-level side. And yet we made them look like one because we couldn't be bothered to impose ourselves. Because we couldn't find a way through. Because we're still acting like the Champions League is a bonus, not a target. And look, I've watched some pretty dire games over the years, but that tie was grim. If you're a neutral and you made it through all 210 minutes plus penalties, then you deserve a medal. The football was lifeless, stale, and flat. You wouldn't know there was so much on the line. You wouldn't know this was our shot at the biggest stage. And here's the thing. It's not just about tactics or even individual performances. It's about mentality. The lack of urgency, the complete absence of aggression or belief, it was honestly shocking. We played like we were waiting for something to happen. But you can't wait in Europe. You take control, or the game passes you by. Kayet knew what they were doing. They didn't try to outplay us. They didn't need to. They just sat tight, blocked the middle, slowed us down, and waited for our mistakes. And we gave them plenty. Now let's talk about the lineup, because Brendan Rodgers went with a team most of us could have predicted. But the problem wasn't just the choices. It was the complete lack of performance from those on the park. Honestly, it's hard to find a single player who left the pitch with credit. From back to front, it was uninspired. It was nervous. It was slow. The front 3, if we can even call them that, were toothless. Young had a few decent touches, but faded badly. Forrest was anonymous aside from one header. Maeda, full of pace as always, but what's the point if you never play the ball in behind for him? The midfield was clogged, slow, predictable. Callum McGregor, our captain, couldn't get near it. Rio Hatate looks like a shadow of himself. Negrin was caught in possession over and over again. And don't even get me started on the fullbacks. The defense? Carter Vickers, a player we've relied on heavily, had arguably his worst game in a Celtic shirt. Mistakes you'd never associate with him, looking hesitant and lacking the usual composure. Kieran Tierney? Just awful. If you watched that game without knowing his reputation, you'd never believe he played Premier League football. Everything about it screamed fear. They were scared to make a mistake, scared to take risks, and as a result, they did nothing. Just endless passing at the back, recycling the ball, then losing it when we tried to go forward. You could hear Rodgers on the touchline begging them to go forward, but if that message isn't getting through in the biggest game of the season, then what does that say? I mean, I kept waiting. Waiting for someone to grab the game. Waiting for someone to demand the ball, to take control, to make something happen. But it never came. The team looked paralyzed, like they had no idea how to play through a compact midfield. No movement, no energy, no courage to try something different. They just looked like they didn't want it. And that's the most damning part of all. Now, let's be clear. This wasn't a case of being overrun by a brilliant opponent. Kayet didn't press us. They didn't even try to dominate the ball. They just sat deep, stayed compact, and waited. And we couldn't do a thing about it. That's what's so frightening. It's not like they played some incredible tactical game. They just took away the center of the pitch and dared us to find a way around. And we couldn't. I lost count of the times we passed it along the back, gave it to McGregor, who took a touch and passed it back. Rinse and repeat. 600 meaningless passes. That's where the stats come from. Possession with no purpose. And any time we did try to go forward, we lost the ball. Every single time. And that's what makes it even more frustrating. Because when we finally brought on a bit of freshness, guys like Dane Murray and Donovan, suddenly we looked better. Not amazing, but better. There was at least a little more conviction. Murray looked like the only defender willing to pass forward with intent. Donovan created a decent chance at the near post. But that was the final 15 minutes of a tie we should have controlled from the very first whistle. This was a team that was mentally checked out. You could feel the fear in their decisions, in their body language. You could feel it in the crowd. This wasn't a team believing in itself. It was a team sleepwalking through a game of massive consequence. And when it went to penalties, we all knew. Let's not kid ourselves. As soon as it went to spot kicks, it felt like Kayet had already won. We were chasing the game. We were chasing the shootout. We were chasing for 2 whole legs. And when you're always reacting, you're never in control. Adamida stepping up first? Why? He looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. No confidence, poor body language, terrible penalty. Then Macon steps up and does the exact same thing. You couldn't script it. And then Maeda? We all love the guy, but he just looked like he'd given up. It was a mess from start to finish. And again, you've got to ask, who's making these decisions? Why is your most out-of-form striker taking the first pen? Why not start strong, put the pressure on them? Instead, we go passive, just like we did all night. And you know what the real tragedy is? We had chances. Not many, but they were there. Maeda had that one-on-one, blazes it. Rio Hatate had a shot blocked. Macon's tame effort. Negrin's near-post miss. Any of those go in, and we're through. And suddenly the conversation changes. But they didn't. And the conversation is this: Celtic failed. So many of these players are shadows of what they were last season. Rio Hatate, Callum McGregor, Carter Vickers. These were guys we built everything around. But maybe we held on to them too long. Maybe we made the same mistake as we did before that infamous 10-in-a-row season. Holding on to names instead of refreshing the squad. And that brings us to the board. Because as much as we can criticize the manager, and there is plenty to say about Brendan Rodgers and his decisions, this goes deeper. Much deeper. This tie didn't sneak up on us. We've known about it for months. Why weren't the signings made before the games? Why are we bringing players in now, after we're already out? What is the logic? What kind of club strategy is that? It's absolutely infuriating. We've got the money. We've had Champions League revenue. We've sold players for big fees. And yet the reinvestment comes too late. Every time. Brendan himself said last season, either you keep the squad fresh or the manager goes. And guess what? It looks like we might get the latter. Because nothing about this feels sustainable. There's a flatness in the dressing room, a tiredness on the pitch. You can see it in the performances. You can feel it in the stands. And what makes it worse is the silence. Where's the leadership from above? No statements. No communication. Just silence. The fans are left in the dark while the same old mistakes are repeated. And now, it's Europa League time. We can laugh about it. We can pretend it's fine. But it's not. Because that was a Champions League group spot. That was £30 million. That was the biggest stage. And we blew it. Again. Where we go from here? That's anyone's guess. The worst part about all this isn't even the result. It's the fact we all saw it coming. We saw the lack of urgency in the transfer window. We saw the sluggish start to the domestic campaign. We saw a team scraping by with just enough to get results against weaker opposition. And yet somehow, we convinced ourselves it would click in Europe. That we'd turn up when it mattered. That the jersey would carry us through. But it didn't. Because this team isn't ready. And deep down, we all knew it. Look at the way we've started the season. St. Mirren, Falkirk, Livingston, Aberdeen. We're not battering these teams. We're not blowing anyone away. We're limping through games. The midfield's not functioning. The attack looks lost. And it's not just form. It's not just early season rust. It's a reflection of the fact this squad is stale. It's bloated in the wrong places, paper thin in the right ones, and full of players that have either regressed or are being misused. And Rodgers has to carry some of the blame. You can't send a team into a European tie like that with no plan B, no spark, no real tactical shift across 2 legs. It's not enough to talk about having possession. That's meaningless when it doesn't lead to chances. When you're recycling the ball between center backs and a deep-lying midfielder, you're just killing time. That's not dominance. That's surrender. But you also can't ask Rodgers to build a European team when the board refuses to equip him with the tools to do it. It's a two-way street. He's not blameless, but he's not working with a Champions League-level squad either. And he knows it. What makes it more insulting is that we've been here before. Multiple times. Every season we talk about the importance of early recruitment. Every summer we get the same lines. We're working hard behind the scenes. Deals take time. We want the right players. Then we go out to a club with half our budget and twice our fight. Again. And the cycle repeats. You've got to wonder, what's the strategy here? If we know the draw date in February, and we know we've got qualifiers in August, what excuse is there for not having key players in the door by June? How can you justify scrambling for signings after you're already out? Is that really the level we're operating at? It's not just incompetence. It's neglect. It's a complete disregard for what this club should be achieving. We sell ourselves as a Champions League club. We talk about our history, our identity, our European nights under the lights, and then we behave like a second-tier outfit in the market. Shopping late, shopping cheap, shopping reactive, and then having the audacity to act surprised when it backfires. And now what? Now we're in the Europa League. And sure, some fans will try to spin it. It's a better level for us. We can actually compete here. And maybe that's true. But let's be real. This isn't where we want to be. This isn't the goal. This is consolation. This is damage control. And after all the money, all the talk, all the promises, that's simply not good enough. I'm looking at this group of players, and I don't see belief. I don't see energy. I don't see leadership. We've got guys like Maeda, Hatate, Carter Vickers, players who were heroes a year ago, and now they're ghosts. McGregor, usually the one who drags us forward, looks drained. The spark that made him the heartbeat of this side, it's flickering. And this is where squad rotation matters. This is where fresh faces matter. Not because we need to replace everyone, but because you need to push standards. You need to shake things up. You need competition. Without it, players get too comfortable, too secure. And that's what this team looks like right now, a team coasting, because nobody's at risk of losing their place. It's why players like Dane Murray and Donovan stood out so much when they came on. Because they were hungry. They looked like they had a point to prove. They played with intent. And even if they're raw, that attitude is what we're crying out for. Maybe it's time to stop being so precious with certain names. Maybe it's time to start rewarding performances over reputations. I mean, what do you lose by throwing Donovan in from the start next match? If Ralston's carrying a knock and Johnson's still out, what's the harm? He looked more comfortable in 15 minutes than Ralston did in 90. Same with Murray. If Carter Vickers isn't right, and let's be honest, he hasn't looked sharp at all, why not let the kid have a run? At least he'll pass forward with conviction. But that's the thing with Rodgers. For all his talk about freshness, he sticks to his favorites. It's like he's paralyzed by loyalty. Even when players are clearly off it, he backs them. And that's dangerous. Because if the senior players aren't performing and the manager won't drop them, what message does that send to the rest of the squad? And if you thought things were flat already, imagine what happens if we lose at Ibrox this weekend. Because make no mistake, Rangers are a shambles right now. But that doesn't mean anything when we're this fragile. Form goes out the window in derbies, sure. But confidence? Mentality? That stuff matters. And if we show up with the same fear and passivity we showed in Europe, we'll get battered. No question. It's mad to think how quickly this has all gone south. 6 months ago, we were going toe-to-toe with Bayern Munich. Now, we're getting knocked out by Kayet and talking about whether or not we'll get out the Europa League group. That's how fast the air has been sucked out of this team. And where's the leadership off the pitch? Nowhere. Not a word from Michael Nicholson. Not a whisper from the board. Just silence. Because that's what this club does when it fails. They disappear. They wait for the next win and hope we forget. But we won't forget. Not this time. Because this isn't just one bad night. This is years of the same failings coming home to roost. This is what happens when you treat Europe like an afterthought. When you let big players leave without proper replacements. When you value the balance sheet more than the team sheet. And don't even get me started on the fan engagement. They'll go quiet for a few days now. No posts, no statements. Just the full-time graphic and Brendan's interview. It's cowardly. They only show face when things are going well. When it's tough, they vanish. And the supporters? The ones paying hundreds for season tickets, buying the shirts, filling the stadium every week? We get radio silence. It's insulting. It's unacceptable. And it's not the Celtic way. I keep hearing folks say, well, you can't topple the board. Maybe not. But you can hold them accountable. You can speak up. You can demand more. Because we've seen what this club can be when it's run properly. We've seen us beat Lazio, Leipzig, Ajax, Barcelona. We felt the energy of a team that believes. And this isn't it. We deserve better than Europa League scraps. We deserve a team that fights, that presses, that believes it belongs at the top. Instead, we're sitting here talking about group stage draws and whether or not Ballot Wisher or Sachi will even start. What's the plan? Bring them in after we're already out, then bench them in favor of the same players who just got us eliminated? Brilliant. It's not good enough. And here's the kicker. We're going to struggle to recruit now, because Champions League football is a huge selling point. That's what brings in players who could go to France or Portugal or Belgium. It's what makes a move to Scotland worthwhile. Without that, what's the pitch? Come play in the Scottish Premiership and hope for a run in the Europa League? Good luck with that. The truth is, this summer has been one big missed opportunity. We had the chance to build something, to capitalize on momentum, to give Brendan the tools. Instead, we stalled. We hesitated. We penny-pinched. And now, we're paying for it. And you want to know the worst bit? The board will still spin it. They'll talk about responsible spending, about ensuring long-term sustainability, about stability, as if any of that matters when you're crashing out of Europe in August, as if you can't be sustainable and ambitious. Clubs smaller than Celtic do it every year. At some point, we've got to stop accepting mediocrity dressed up as prudence. I'm tired of the excuses, tired of hearing about projects and development and planning windows. We're a Champions League club acting like a mid-table one. And unless something changes, radically and quickly, we're going to keep getting the same results. Out early in Europe, struggling to progress, losing key players and replacing them with gambles. So where do we go from here? Well, the Europa League draw is on Friday. Maybe we'll get a kind group. Maybe the new signings will hit the ground running. Maybe this squad will wake up and start playing with a bit of pride. Maybe, but I wouldn't bank on it. We're at a crossroads, and how we respond in the next few weeks will define not just the season, but the direction of the entire club. Will we continue on this path of complacency? Or will someone, anyone, finally take responsibility? Because one thing is certain, what we're doing right now isn't working. Not on the pitch, not in the dugout, and definitely not in the boardroom. Before we proceed, subscribe to our channel and enable notifications to receive all exclusive news about Celtic FC. Don't miss any details about your favorite team. It's extremely important for Celtic FC fans. The streets of Glasgow seem to be buzzing with a peculiar energy, the kind that usually precedes an Old Firm derby or a European night under the lights at Parkhead. Yet this time the chatter has nothing to do with a match on the fixture list, but rather a name whispered with growing conviction: Mason Mount. The rumors swirling through pubs, fan forums, and local radio waves suggest that the English midfielder, once heralded as the golden boy of Chelsea and more recently seen at Manchester United, is on the verge of making the most unexpected of moves to Celtic Football Club. Few would have imagined such a transfer only weeks ago, but in Scotland the improbable has a way of taking shape, particularly when the green and white hoops are involved. The excitement lies not only in the caliber of the player, but also in the audacity of the club to reach for a figure so prominent on the English football stage. Mount, known for his relentless pressing, eye for a pass and knack for finding space, could instantly transform the dynamics of Celtic's midfield, and it is that prospect which has tongues wagging in every corner of the footballing community across the country. What makes the whisperings even more fascinating is the timing of it all, as Celtic appear to be in a period where ambition is being questioned by critics and rival supporters alike. The Scottish champions have always prided themselves on nurturing talent, developing stars who later move south of the border or onto continental Europe, but the suggestion that they might now be bringing in a player of Mount's pedigree flips the usual narrative on its head. Fans recall how names like Henrik Larsson and Shunsuke Nakamura once redefined expectations of what Celtic could attract, and Mount's rumored arrival evokes that same sense of a cultural moment, a step beyond the ordinary. Across Celtic Park, there is also a sense of defiance. The idea that the club, so often seen as a stepping stone, could actually pull one of England's brightest midfielders into their orbit feels almost rebellious. Rival fans might scoff, journalists may express skepticism, but within the Celtic faithful, there is a swelling of belief that perhaps the whispers are not baseless after all. In pubs near Gallowgate and beyond, conversations stretch late into the night, dissecting not only the financial feasibility, but the symbolic statement such a signing would represent for Scottish football as a whole. It is the European stage, though, where imaginations run wild at the very mention of Mount donning the green and white. Supporters envision Champions League nights where his quick feet and intelligent movement could unlock defenses that have historically frustrated Celtic. They imagine him combining with the likes of Kyogo Furuhashi, threading passes that slice through packed backlands and raising the tempo of games where Celtic have often struggled to maintain rhythm. Observers note that Mount has not quite found his consistent footing at Manchester United, with injuries and tactical shifts limiting his impact, but a fresh start at Celtic could revive the energy that once made him indispensable at Stamford Bridge. The notion of him embracing the atmosphere of Parkhead, the thunderous roar of "You'll never walk alone," enveloping him as he takes the pitch, is enough to send chills down the spines of even the most hardened supporters. There is, of course, doubt about whether Celtic can truly compete financially with the giants of England or Europe, but rumors are fueled less by hard economics and more by hope. And in this case, the hope has a heartbeat that grows louder with every passing hour. Beyond the practicalities, there is also an almost romantic dimension to the speculation, a reminder of football's capacity to surprise and inspire. Mason Mount moving to Celtic is not just about numbers on a wage slip or the price of a transfer fee, but about the collision of traditions, the joining of narratives that rarely intertwine. Scottish football has long been searching for ways to capture global attention beyond the old firm rivalry, and a name of Mount's stature could reframe perceptions of the league itself. In the modern era, where football is dictated by superclubs and billion-pound investments, the thought that Celtic might secure a player so embedded in the fabric of England's top flight feels like a reclamation of magic, a declaration that surprises are still possible. For supporters who grew up idolizing legends that seemed almost mythical in their presence, the thought of welcoming another such figure ignites childhood wonder all over again. The discussions spill into workplaces, classrooms, and households, and while some scoff at the implausibility, others lean into the dream, reminding doubters that football thrives precisely on the unlikeliest of stories becoming reality. Still, the biggest question remains unanswered. Is there truth in the rumor, or is this simply one of those summer tales that flicker brightly before fading into the fog of speculation? For now, Celtic fans cling to fragments of gossip, a cryptic mention from a journalist, a wink from a supposed insider, the silence from Mount's representatives that fuels more intrigue than it extinguishes. Even skeptics admit there is something compelling about the persistence of the story, as if the rumor itself has taken on a life of its own, weaving into the daily rhythm of Scottish football discourse. Whether or not Mason Mount truly arrives at Celtic Park may matter less than the hope and imagination his name has already inspired, for the whispers have reminded supporters of the joy in dreaming, the thrill of possibility, and the unifying power of a shared belief. Until clarity comes, the city will continue to hum with anticipation, every chant and every pub carrying with it the sense that football, in all its unpredictability, might just be preparing another twist. And if that twist leads Mount to Glasgow, it will be remembered not only as a signing, but as a seismic moment in the story of Celtic Football Club. Hello, fan. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, as it means a lot to Celtic FC. Also, share your opinion about the news in the comments below. See you in the next video.